The snow fell softly that December evening, covering the park bench in a thin white blanket. Margaret Hayes knelt in the cold, her bare knees pressing against the frozen ground, her red dress doing little to shield her from the winter chill. In her hands, she held a small wrapped sandwich, carefully torn in half. Her children sat before her on that snowy bench. 7-year-old Emma, bundled in her pink sweater, watched with patient eyes. Beside her, 5-year-old Tommy fidgeted in his beige cardigan, his small hands already reaching forward. They had learned not to complain. At their age, they already understood that their mother was doing her best. "Here you go, my loves," Margaret said softly, her voice warm despite the cold that bit at her fingers. She handed each child their portion, making sure Tommy's piece was slightly larger. He was going through a growth spurt, always hungry. She kept nothing for herself. There would be time to eat later, she told herself. There was always later. Across the path, standing beneath a flickering street lamp, David Richardson watched the scene unfold. He had been taking his evening walk through the park, something his doctor recommended after too many years behind a desk building his company. The 3-piece suit he wore cost more than most people earned in a month, but right now it felt heavy on his shoulders. He had everything, or so it seemed. A successful business, properties in 3 cities, investments that multiplied while he slept. But he had no one to share dinner with, no small voices calling him home, no reason to hurry anywhere except the next meeting. He watched as Margaret smiled at her children, brushing snow from Emma's hair, adjusting Tommy's collar. The tenderness in her gestures struck something deep in his chest. This woman, kneeling barefoot in the snow, sharing a single sandwich between 3 people, had something he had spent millions trying to find. She had love. Pure, uncomplicated, unconditional love. David made a decision then. Not the calculated kind he made in boardrooms, but the kind that comes from somewhere deeper. The kind his own mother would have made before she passed, before he became too busy to remember what really mattered. He walked closer, his polished shoes crunching on the snow. Margaret looked up, instinctively pulling her children closer. In her experience, men in expensive suits didn't stop to chat with struggling single mothers in the park. "Forgive me," David said gently, keeping his distance. "I don't mean to intrude. My name is David Richardson. I couldn't help but notice you and your children." Margaret's jaw tightened. She had heard lines before, offers that came with conditions she would never accept. "We're fine, thank you," she said firmly, though her voice shook slightly. David raised his hand slowly. "Please, I mean no disrespect. I wonder if you might allow me to buy you all a proper dinner. There's a family restaurant just across the street. Warm food, warm chairs. It's quite cold out here." "We don't need charity," Margaret replied, though the words came out more sad than proud. "It's not charity," David said quietly. It's been a long time since I shared a meal with anyone. I was hoping you might keep me company, if you're willing." There was something in his voice. Not pity, not superiority, just loneliness. Margaret recognized it because she felt it herself every night after the children fell asleep, when the silence reminded her that she was facing the world alone. She looked at her children. Emma's lips were turning slightly blue. Tommy had stopped eating to blow on his cold fingers. The sandwich was nearly gone anyway. "All right," she said finally. "But just dinner. Nothing more. Just dinner," David agreed. "Nothing more." The restaurant was warm and bright, decorated with simple holiday lights. They sat at a corner booth, and for the first time in months, Margaret felt the tension leave her shoulders. David insisted they order whatever they wanted. Emma chose chicken soup. Tommy wanted spaghetti and meatballs. Margaret selected the pot roast special, then immediately felt guilty about the price. "Please," David said, as if reading her mind. "Let yourself enjoy it. When was the last time someone took care of you?" The question brought unexpected tears to Margaret's eyes. "I don't remember," she admitted. As they ate, they talked. Not about money or problems, but about life. Margaret told him about her children's dreams. Emma wanted to be a teacher. Tommy loved dinosaurs and wanted to work in a museum. David listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Tommy's silly jokes, complimenting Emma's politeness. He told them about his own childhood, growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. How his mother used to make Sunday dinners that brought the whole neighborhood together. How he had forgotten, somewhere along the way, that success meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. "I built an empire," he said quietly, more to himself than to them. "But I forgot to build a life." After dinner, as they prepared to leave, David did something unexpected. He pulled out a business card and wrote on the back of it, "This is my personal number. And this," he added, pulling out a second card, "is the contact information for my company's human resources director. We're always looking for good people. If you're interested, Margaret, I think you'd be perfect for our customer service department. The pay is fair, and we provide benefits. Health insurance, childcare assistance." Margaret stared at the cards, her hands trembling. "Why are you doing this?" David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My mother used to tell me that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they have children and red dresses and bare feet in the snow. She said when you meet an angel, you help them. Not because they asked, but because that's what decent people do. You reminded me tonight of what matters. Consider it a thank you." Tears flowed freely down Margaret's cheeks now. Emma hugged her mother's arm. Tommy looked up at David with wide, grateful eyes. "I don't know what to say," Margaret whispered. "Say you'll call on Monday," David replied with a gentle smile. "Say you'll let me do this one good thing. And maybe if you're willing, say you'll bring these two wonderful children to have dinner with me again sometime. I find I quite enjoy having people to eat with." 3 months later, Margaret started her new job. 6 months after that, she had her own apartment, modest but warm, with bedrooms for both children. A year later, Emma and Tommy called David Uncle David, and he never missed their birthdays. David Richardson had learned something that winter evening. True wealth wasn't in his bank account. It was in the sound of children's laughter, in shared meals, in the simple act of seeing someone who needed help and choosing to be kind. And Margaret Hayes learned that sometimes, when you're at your lowest, when you're kneeling in the snow with nothing left to give, grace arrives. Not because you earned it, but because kindness still exists in the world. Sometimes it wears a 3-piece suit. Sometimes it carries a business card. And sometimes it just stops to notice. The park bench where they met became a special place for all of them. They visited it together each December, bringing sandwiches, though now they had plenty. They sat together, remembering the night that changed everything, teaching Emma and Tommy that the greatest gifts in life aren't things. They're moments, they're connections. They are the choice to see another person struggle and respond with an open heart. As David often said, looking at the family he had found in the snow, "I thought I was helping them, but the truth is they saved me." And that, more than any fortune, was the richest blessing of all.